Okay. Hurrah! Okay, everybody, hi there, ho there, hello there. No one's here yet. Okay, this is the Friday live stream. We're at 5 o'clock Central European time, which is 11 in the morning Eastern Standard Time. It's dark outside. We've had 2 days of snowing. Started snowing on Wednesday evening, and then Thursday morning snow, and then Friday snow. I didn't come down here Thursday because of this. I had class today. Came to class to do my work, do some prep. I'm a little late now because I was doing things. La 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 la. You hear me? I hope so. I got the speaker up there. It hears me now. 1, 2, 3. I have to get the recording sensor to see how this works. Well, congratulations, everyone. This is our thing. We're back. I'm back from my my mother-in-law's house on the trip we were. My wife will be going away this weekend back to her mother-in-law's. I'm not going with her because I have things I can't get away from. I need to do things this week here, and I couldn't get away from them. I have the European Conservative asked me to add quotes to my review of this book. I have to add some quotes to the article. I have to add 5 quotes. That's me sitting on my ass doing that. I have to finish my political form essay so I can send out to a journal. I'm going to be doing a couple other things like this. A lot of my students have already complained about a couple of my students complained that I haven't given more substantive comments. I'm going to be doing that this weekend for my Polish students on the Federalist stuff. We'll see what happens. Federalism, yay, Federalist Papers. I had a whole long day. I was mad at myself. I went off the rails because the student doing on the Indians, American Indians, and she doesn't understand. It was painful to do it because she wants to talk about Indians and the role of Indians had on the American democracy, and she doesn't understand what sovereignty means. Mm-hmm. She didn't understand what the concept of sovereignty really means and how it's understood. She understood it purely as kind of, it's a problem because sovereignty has a very unique concept, both in terms of the idea of a body politic, an entity, a body, and a willing agency. And what does that means in a federal system in that sense, and why the Indians have a very aspect of this, and why, the cultural problem of and hunter-gatherer people maintaining their identity against a commercial people. Okay, that's Tocqueville's famous thing, and Tocqueville's whole argument in the end of the last chapter 12, part 2, volume 1, where he talks about 3 races in North America, right? The black slaves, the blacks, the Indians, and the English or the Europeans. And this is still a kind of very, you have to ask why. This was a competition, and that the black is kind of in a weird situation of being, more in common with the white European in that sense, but not really, but having nothing in common with the Indian, and the Indian being able to more easily integrate with the European, but doesn't want to. Okay, that's the whole thing of Tocqueville's analysis. Yeah, so that was it. We went down 3 or 4 rabbit holes, and that basically ate away time I could have spent on other student papers who did Republicanism. The girl who was doing Republicanism versus liberalism in the Federalist Papers, which is a very interesting topic from political theory point of view. I understand the Indian. I mean, I know what the problem of the Indians are. Why the student wants to do it, because it's cool, man. It's multiculti. It's like this. I had to explain the problem of another student wanting to do the. I mean, we had a whole question. I had to go in a whole track. The question of national identity and the question of a nation. The student was doing the civic nation versus. She wants to talk about. The question of civic nationalism against ethnic nationalism, particularly in light of the Federalist Papers' idea of the creation of a nation. Okay, the idea of the creation of a federal union or nation in the Federalist Papers, and the idea of a civic nation, and responding to Yak's where's Yak's? It's over here. Bernard Yak's essay on civic nationalism, the myth of a civic nation, which is very much, this is something, a series of articles you responded against. I mean, this is a response to the divide between the idea of civic nationalism and ethnic nationalism. And I've talked about this to the group before, you guys, and it's going to be kind of something I'm not going to go into. This is the problem with that paper. I mean, it's a good idea. This is the problem. This is the fundamental misunderstanding of the civic nationalism, is that the civic entity becomes over time a real population, and the idea of I know some people have dealt with this already. My friend, Michael Cochin, pointed out to me about 5 or 6 years ago that the Canadian, Pierre Trudeau purposefully embraced multiculturalism in Canada as the means of creating a civic nationalism, because there's no ethnic nationalism possible in Canada, because it only leads to conflict because of the British, the British characteristic of colonial aspect, because the Canadians are really simply what? They are the British subjects who laid loyal to Britain. They were the Americans who stayed loyal to Britain, who did not want to join the United States and become independent from Britain. So therefore, their identity is stuck with being British. But Quebec, okay, and the Quebecois, who really do not see themselves as British, but as French. And therefore, it creates in Canada the problem. And we have to understand that it was Pierre Trudeau, the father of Justin, who introduced the idea of multiculturalism as the basis of Canadian Canadian civic identity. And in many ways, the Dysons of the European Union looked at this as, oh, what a wonderful idea. Now, the problem with this is, for the American context, this is problematic because this was misunderstood. And I think in the English context also, this is why I've been watching David Starkey. And I agree with David Starkey here greatly, that England, the UK is not a nation. And the attempt by New Labour to make it a nation of creating the Britons was an idea, as misguided idea, particularly tied to the one of a nation of a diversity. Right? It's becoming Canada. It's Canadianizing in a certain aspect of this. And I think this is, and now David doesn't talk about this because David doesn't understand this idea that the Canadians were basically bringing multiculturalism as the basis of a civic nationalism that would hold together and therefore escape the ethnic question, right? They could avoid the ethnic question. They could just diversity, multiculturalism, so we can be, in other words, and they needed to basically break down the English, the historical consciousness of what Canada meant of being English or being British in that sense, right? And then undoing that in that sense. And the problem with the English situation is not, you had to derationalize the English model in that sense. You had to destroy the traditional British Constitution and to create a whole new thing. And that's what I think what Starkey perfectly explains about the Blairite Revolution and what it fundamentally does to the English destroys the English Constitution. And the solution to this now. I won't get into my solution. I know a couple. I've been seeing the kind of memes and the memes on Twitter or X about some people in Britain saying, please, Trump, come invade us. William of Orange us, right, to restore England of the Stam police state. That I don't think that's going to happen. Any real? That's just internet, right wing thinking. But in one sense, and Starkey is. I need to have. I'm going to have a big, email with Starkey about the problem of the king, because the king has to be. You're going to have to replace the king. The king is a globalist. The king is a part of the problem, and his whole line is the part of the problem. You're going to need to, how can I say this? James II him. James II him. Maybe it's better to have the pedo President Andrew or an outsider, new line, a new royal line. Go find find some old line and restore that, or you can just get rid of the monarchy. But I don't think you can. I think Starkey is a monarchist. I think he's right that you need the monarchy. You need the symbols of the monarchy to maintain it. But the House of Windsor is a disaster. You need a monarchic line with balls, and I don't see any balls in William. I think he has all the mental defects of his father in a sense. And Elizabeth I blame Elizabeth's cowardice at the end of through most of her life to challenge things. Her utter dependence on prime ministers to save her. Beatrice of Netherlands had more courage than she did in that sense. This is what, even Starkey talks about this. The Elizabethan hands off of everything. Her failure to basically fundamentally tell the court no when it overrid the act, sided with. She should have made a more explicit attack on the abuse of Parliament by Theresa May. Then later by the speaker against Johnson, and also against the what do you call it, the prorogation of the Parliament and the court's interference in this. Should have fought against Blair, should have refused to legitimize the destruction of the House of Lords, should have fundamentally refused to acknowledge force a constitutional challenge and make a constitutional case to defend the Lord Chancellor, against the destruction of this. In other words, the Crown had an obligation to protect the Constitution, and it failed, both Elizabeth and that. So I don't want to get into it. This is my little. I agree with Starkey greatly, but the problem is not going to be just a restoration, because you need You need a body of people to do this. You don't have that. And to be honest with you, I don't trust, Farage and that crowd around Farage are too déclassé. They don't have the gravitas to be the necessary English elite that needs to happen. So therefore, maybe you need another Norman, not a King William coming in, a William of Orange, that is, coming in and cleaning house, but a Norman conquest. So that's neither here nor there. I don't know if you guys know this. I've been reading. I've been reading this series of books by this German writer, Wolfgang Eberle, about the Davos debate, the fight between Cassirer and Heidegger, Benjamin, Cassirer, and Wittgenstein, about basically the period of, what was it, 1919, 1929, basically in German philosophy in that sense. Very interesting things about this. I think this is interesting. But then his other book about the women thinkers. Again, this is Arendt, Simone de Beauvoir, and Rand and Simone Weil. The four different authors who are here. Again, this has been fun. I've read the PDFs earlier. Someone gave me some. I bought hard copies. I wanted the hard copies because after I had an EPUB and I was reading the EPUB and I read the EPUB. And I also had it read to me by the AI. I mean, no AI, but by my tablet. And I've also been reading. I read Sohab Amramri's book, Tyranny, Inc. about private corporation. There was the threat from the private sector, the big business, big tech, big private sector, tyrannization of things. I know a lot of libertarian conservatives who are hostile are still. I mean, I have a problem with him because he is a integralist. And he's a Catholic integralist in that sense. He really thinks it this way. And I have to remind people that Catholic integralism is a globalism. It is an alternative globalization. Oh, but they believe in subsidiarity. Not really. They're multicultural in the sense that they believe in mass migration. Well, they don't. Yes, they do. They don't. They would like to see Catholic populations basically overwhelm Protestant societies, and they favor immigration in the United States to Catholicize America. That's just a kind of anti-Catholic bigotry. No, that's English. I'm English. I'm descended from the English. Yes, we do have an inherent anti-Catholic bigotry, in the sense that we don't want to be Catholic. And it's funny that I live in a Catholic society, but it is what we call a pagan. My Polish friend joked that Poland is not really Catholic. It is a pagan people with Catholic superstitions. Their Catholicism is dying slowly, as all secularization, communization, post-communist, and intergenerational things destroying Catholicism. And to be honest with you, Catholicism is not doesn't have a response to the question of masculinity. Oh, the priest, okay, yes, I mean, the cult of Mary and these things is as much a Catholicism is a feminization religion in that sense. Now, I don't want to say, well, that means you're against religion. No, I'm just against, but don't the Catholics argue that you shouldn't be? The Catholics argue that you should have only male priests. Okay, yeah, that's one aspect of it. But these male priests tend to be very feminized. and the kind of cults that they produce tends to, in other words, ironically go counter to the thing that they that yes, in some ways they do try to react against the modern world, but at the same time, their reaction against the modern world is as much a globalism than a localism. Okay, it is a globalization, and I used to have water here and it's gone. Jeez, I used to have a nice thing of water here and it's now gone. Where did my water go? Oh, my wife cleaned up everything before. Okay, never mind. Let's go to this point. We're 20 minutes into the show, so it's like, rah, rah, rah. Let me now do what I promised, in that sense. I end my little diatribe about, that. People want to say, why haven't you talked about the American elections? Well, I've been a bad boy on Twitter a little bit. I got on Facebook. Some people got mad at me because I was angry at Thune's election as majority leader. I still am. I don't trust him. He's McConnell 2.0. I'm angry at a lot of Republicans saying, "Well, Trump cost us more victories in the House." Come on, it was a Trump election. Trump won this election. It was if it wasn't for Trump, you guys would have lost. If it was anyone but Trump, this would have been we'd have Kamala Harris. Okay, this idea that Ron DeSantis could have won, bullshit. Ron DeSantis would not have won either Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin. Okay, he would not have played well in New York. Trump came less than 10 points from New York. The future, New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York are going to be the new battleground states. Illinois, my God, California. Go look at the California map. But wait a minute. Why didn't more Republicans win? Because the stupid ass Republican establishment ran against Trump. Okay, they ran against him. So therefore, the down ballot, the low propensity voters who were for Trump weren't going to pull the lever for the people that they didn't think, they knew that they didn't trust. Okay. So they should have, but some of the MAGA guys lost too. Well, because why? Because the GOP establishment didn't give them funding, and the Democrats targeted everything. I mean, look what happened. The stupid Republicans dumped millions of dollars in the Maryland Senate race, where Hogan, an anti-Trumper, was never going to become senator. Yes, but he was the governor. But okay, governors don't always, as anyone who studies this, even though they're statewide offices, they have different agendas. Therefore, a Democratic voter base, actually different, not even that, depends on what kind of voter turnout when it happened. If it was a midterm election, then that could have happened, that a Republican majority would set certain interest, and a divided Democratic Party could lead to a Republican governor. But when the Senate happens, the Democrats may have, in other words, they have a different interest agenda. What could divide you at the governor level won't divide you at the Senate level. Okay, this is what really shapes elections in that sense. In other words, the idea that the Senate level, the Democrats would have more in common than at the local level, where there's basically fights about who gets what and how they get given. So that could be a battle with a patronage between the different sides of the Democratic Party, and that one side of the Democratic Party would fight against the others. I saw that in Rhode Island with Gina. Okay, Gina, when she became governor, only won because she ran against the establishment Democrats. But then when she became governor, what'd she do? She made peace. I mean, that's why I was conned by her. I was conned by Gina. I voted for a Democrat. Why? Because I despise the stupid Republican fung that was running at the time. who I knew was going to be another what is it? Chafee Jr. Young Lincoln Chafee was the disaster. He decided to, he gave us, he abandoned Christmas. This is the holiday tree. This was the son of John Chafee, the establishment, old Republican Lions. What happened is the son was like, oh my God, wet noodle. Named after he named after Lincoln Almond. Okay, the old Rhode Island Republican establishment. What did they produce? They produced turncoats. Lincoln Chafee was a turncoat who abandoned Bush. Who said, well, we got to be more, we got to be more sensitive to these issues. More go to the left. Abandon thinking that this is what I call the people's Rhino, Republican name only. But they're not. It's the old Republican establishment who, because of intergenerational positions, abandoned Republican beliefs because of their interests. Their class interest became tied to global economic elites that no longer valued the policies of the conservative movement, and therefore they went away from the conservative movement. So therefore, that explains that to understand like what happened in New England, the Republican. That's what Collins in Maine. You're not going to change her position because why? There's Democratic governors. You have a Democratic governor, Democratic state authorities. The only way you can put pressure on her is that if Republicans are able to switch enough working class voters, and those voters not only in the second district but in the lower district, saying, "Hey, quit this," but they're so tied to the tit of the welfare state. I'm going to love if Musk and I can't ever say his name. The other guy, the Indian guy, Rasami, I'm forgetting it. If both of those get in Dodge are able to start cutting agencies and cutting things, maybe they can cut some of these programs and encourage some of these people to see their interests no longer tied to government, but tied to other things. And therefore, maybe they will say, well, I don't want to be tied to a thing that makes me poor and dependent. So I'm hoping that this will create a systemic, fundamental change that will energize things and seismic shift, a Kuhnian paradigm shift, to paraphrase someone I talked to recently. Okay, so let me talk to our audience a little bit today. I want to quote James Corlitz wrote, I don't know if he's here today. He says on Maras, he was in prison in 1936, and he did write an extended essay called The Politics of Nature, setting out some of the core elements of his political thought. This was an introduction to a compilation of articles he put together at the same time. I can send a copy of the English translation of his volume to you if you're interested. Yes, I am interested. And you can, if it's a PDF you want me to send, you have my email. It's Bates. No, it's C.A.C.A. Bates @uw.edu.pl. Okay. I'm sorry. I am interested in that. I thought I had a copy of Maras. My copy disappeared. I have lots of books, right? I thought I had a copy of Maras, but no, it's not. I can't find it. Okay, that may be my fault. That can be my fault, and I think it's going to be driving people crazy. I went looking for it before going to my trip. When I came back. His alternative to seeing will as the basis of politics seems to mix Aristotle with some of the early bio perspectives that were emerging in the late 19th century. Like Hippotontaine. Okay, yeah, Hippotontaine. Hippotontaine's piece, his commentary on the French Revolution is very interesting. This is Liberty Fund has published some of the Hippotontaine's commentary stuff, so that's interesting. He goes, the further I read further into Boutang's book, which that was mentioned last week, Le Politics considered cum souci. He was the continuing, and Baton was the secretary for Maurras. It was the first of armor plan series that never happened. And the initial army sets out the argument for politics as a human concern, or souci, something distinct from both metaphysical and purely practical, and ultimately rooted in the fact that all humans are born to develop this. Following Maurras, whom I guess would follow Aristotle. I'm not sure if, see, the problem with Maurras and Will, I'm remembering Maurras from 30 years ago, okay, when I read him as a graduate student, like this. Maurras always, and the new, the French right, reactionary right, embraced the concept of will. I know you said earlier about the question of right here, that seeing will as the basis of his alternative to seeing will as the basis of politics. This idea that his idea of nature in that sense, yes. Well, I think this is the problem. This is the big tension. I don't need to know, because metaphysics, this idea they have to run away from metaphysics. This is the very much the Comtean moment that Kant thought. Augustus Kant and that crowd argued that we have to escape from metaphysics, right? This is what the positivism, the idea of French positivism. Positivism in the French tradition is a product of escaping from metaphysics. So, I mean, in one sense, Maurras may be in this sense. I have to look at this, because this could be a right, in many ways, Comte, who is, you can add one sense, the idea of progress, Comte's concept of positivism and positivistic science gives us the argument for progress, right? The idea of historic progress and progressive conception of, but through a positivistic lens. This is what Strauss always talks about. This is the Leo Strauss in his introduction to his courses. If you go read his course introductions, and you can even read his in What is Political Philosophy, in that book, What is Political Philosophy, his discussion in the essay, What is Political Philosophy, the introduction of this idea of this movement of the problem of political philosophy is the two twin problems that make political philosophy impossible in our times. That is positivism, which positivism denies it's the fact-value distinction in a superficial way, but it also does the other thing. Positivism sets forth the doctrine of progress. Then this leads us to the problem of historicism, right? The idea of historic epochs that are fundamentally unique and separate from each other and don't have any connection to this. And therefore, what is true at one epoch is not going to be true in the other epoch. And the idea that therefore these, this is the problem. So and the argument in Strauss is that that positivism ultimately leads to historicism, and he points to this in his critique of Kant. Now, this can be found in Strauss's lecture on, I think it's called The Introduction to Political Philosophy. I think it's The Introduction to Political. I can't find it. It's the 1965 lecture class that's published by Chicago University Chicago Press, with the introduction by the Zuckets. I think it's I think it's Catherine. Catherine introduces it. I think maybe it's both, but I think it's Catherine. I disagree with the Zuckets here because they leave out the Aristotle. They give us the positivism. They give us the historicism with the evaluation of Collingwood, Strauss's examination of Collingwood. but they leave out his discussion of Aristotle as his response. And the argument is, oh, you can see the other stuff in Aristotle. No, I think you need to understand that that volume needed the chapters on Aristotle to balance it out, to make the point that Strauss was trying to make there, that he will make in the epilogue, his epilogue to the social science book. You know, the famous epilogue where he's all the other students are talking about the various behavioral these political science traditions of positivism and behavioralism, and the problems that they lead, from Dahl to all the various thinkers, and then his speech at the end, which gets republished, I think in the APSR, and then they create a whole big dust up. Benjamin Barber has a very good article. Benjamin Barber, a left-wing pro-democracy guy, in the 1990s, early thousands, writes a very good APSR article about this debate and argues that, well, the left-wing, Wolin and Sheldon Wolin and Sklar, not Judith, but the male Sklar, they attacked Strauss openly for this thing, and defended the positivism that they themselves rejecting. So the hypocrisy of their position. And Barber makes to your point that Strauss ultimately was proved right here in this debate. That Strauss was absolutely right in the positivistic dust up in the APSR, and this series of letters. That debate in the APSR is a very interesting debate. What does it have to do with these French authors? Because I think this is the problem here, that I think there is something in Maurras that is struggling with that same issue Strauss is. That is the tension between the question of positivism, wants to escape metaphysics, but wants to avoid historicism, right? That's the in other words, the positivist is trying to escape the merely historical analysis, but having at the same time a science, a rational science, but at the same time is not wishing to engage in metaphysics, right? So that's so to what degree is this position of Maurras not a echo in Comte, a kind of right wing Comte, right? And then he gave another post, Corliss does. Thanks for the discussion of Foucault and Derrida for last time we were there, right? I think it seems like a deep topic. I saw that Pierre Tagouf, a veteran French sociologist, published a book in 2000 called "The Puerie Deconstruct." I have to know. I mean, what is deconstruction? Basically, what is on this? I think it looks, in other words, from the blurb, he looks at the question of the relationship between Foucault and other French theory thinkers in the whole current woke movement. But it's 20 pounds, so I haven't bought a copy yet. I don't know the book in that sense. Most of my young women colleagues, all love this French structuralist thinker. I can never say his name. You have to forgive me if I don't get it wrong. Pierre Bourdieu, the French sociologist, Marxist. This is, post-Foucault sociologist, looking to people like, what is it? Look at Dirk Gramsci, Marx, Goffman, Husserl. They all love this guy. He is such a, he's a bag of complete, Yeah, he's a kind of Marxist, but then he's the Marxist at the end of Marxism. So therefore, he throws in gender stuff. He has this ridiculous what is it? What is it? I got in trouble. I think I said it. I kind of lose my. Yeah, the domination masculine domination. The logic and okay, 1998. La distinction. The social critique of the judgment of taste, right? This idea of taste. Let me just. I have a problem with. The more I've read, it's just this wordy nonsense. I couldn't understand it. Back in like this, he has his own idea of social capital. His theory of praxis comes up with it. He extends the idea of capital to include social capital, cultural capital, financial capital, symbolic capital. In other words, it becomes so everywhere. 1972 Online of the Theory of Practice is a strong invitation to anthropological theory, right? This is that old nonsense. He was a sociologist studying the Algerian crisis. He was in the reserve army. He was studied under Louis Alcire, and then a conscription in the French army, 55. He chose not to enter the reserve officer college like other grants, and then therefore served with people of his own thing deployed in Algiers, right? Guarding military installations and then clerical work, right? He went to a clerk. And then during the Algiers Wars, he took ethnographic work of the Berbers, right? Of the Kebiri people of the Berbers, right? Again, the Algerians, right? This is the laying groundwork for his anthropological reputation, right? His sociology of Algiers in 1958 became a success, and then he published in America in 1962. His field work online, a theory of practice of anthropological theory. So he became this idea of this. Now, I look at his ideas of this, of capital, social capital. This is funny because, someone like a neoliberal, he is clearly in the tradition of Louis Alcires and what's the other monster that I always want to say with. I have to be careful. I say this right. Even though he says I'm part of this with I'm Marx, yes, but Weber and Durkheim as well. But Gramsci, and here's the problem. Norbert Elias is a very interesting fellow. I've read his book. I've been looking at his book, Norbert Elias, a German sociologist. His idea of it's a very interesting Norbert Elias's work on the I have to be careful here because it is the Society of Individuals, 2010 narrative. But where is the book? He got something earlier. I have to be careful because it was an early book all the way at the origins of his things. He wrote he was a student of Mannheim. Chose to cancel this project and followed Mannheim, right? In the 1930s. How Nazis came to power over 1933. Institute was close to close. Already submitted his habilitation thesis called the Man of the Court. Was no more formally accepted and not published until 1969. This is the Court Society, his work on the courts. I remember this stuff. I remember his books on the Elias's work. I think it's over here. Where am I? I have 2 volumes on the court that he wrote. I got read that in like the 1980s. It was a very progress of this. The Court Society. I remember this. He fled to Paris, and his elderly parents were made in Bezlo, and his father died in 1940, and his mother was deported to the Therian side and murdered in Treblinka, right? So therefore, this is this idea. He was in England, and he was very much a British citizen, and his work on sociology was tied. I remember this. I remember his work. I have this court society stuff. So LIS. So therefore, Baudelaire is kind of losing this court stuff, because in many ways, Baudelaire's you have to understand, there was this one LIS's work on the courts is outstanding, but it's not Marxist. It's not Marxist. It's Mannheim. Or Strauss actually understood. This is why Strauss's early essay about Mannerheim, of this historicism, this idea of historical progress. There's an essay on Mannerheim that's not translated in. It's not translated in the early writing volume, but translated in the essays about the 1930s. That's published by Palmgrave. I forget who translated it. I think it's, but it's an outstanding about conspicuousness. It's the basic fundamental concept of Mannerheim's kind of historicism. So therefore, this is kind of idea of the particular reality of a culture developing out of this. And I think this is why I liked Ulas. I didn't like Baudelaire because Baudelaire, because I could never understand what he's writing, and it's kind of like people say, "Oh, that's you're American." No, I just never thought he was clear, and he just babbled. It was very difficult. Maybe it has to be done in French, okay? But when I read it, was in like in the 80s, so as the anthropological works never really interested me, and that's how they were interesting in that kind of very anthropological sense. Outline of theory practice, right? This is that distinction, the question of social taste. Okay, this was published in 1984. It was published in 1979. His book on capital, which was originally done in a German book, that Ökonomische Kapital, Cultural Capital. So it's Forms of Capital, 1986. Which is Handbook of Theory and Research for Sociological Education, the idea of capital. Now, it's funny that someone like, you have his Force of Law in 1986, translated the Force of Law in the Hastings Journals, 87. There's a need, more evidence to prove this essay is written by Baudelaire, not others, considering Bourgeois never talked about law. So therefore, there's a whole argument that this essay was really not written by Baudelaire, but someone else. Baudelair's 88 book on the political ontology of Martin Heidegger. Again, the Heidegger brace. This is the change you can see. So Baudelaire follows the same path from the cultural anthropological Marxism that started with Louis Saussure and the and that whole camp of Saussure, the structural Marxism of Saussure, to post-structuralism. He gets, I'm not sure the influence of, where does Foucault really enter him? I think it's more, it's rebelling against this. There is a sociology in that sense. It's in the power, it's in the capital argument that he does in class argument as he tried to go there. But it's still Marxism in that sense, and this is more what's it called? Someone like Goffman and Gramsci, and again, Sartre's Marxism than Foucault's. I don't know. I'd have to really study Baudelaire some more. Who cares? I could never tolerate him. Why? Because the titles. Let's go look at his titles of his work. It was always kind of, I always thought this was so silly. The distinction, the 1998, okay, go back to the article. Let's go here. It's starting in the 1990s. 90s, he started going to culture stuff. In 1990, And 1998, La Domination, masculine domination. So this is his hat tip to the feminists. The Language of Symbolic Power was again published at the Académie Les Fardes. It was published in 1981, Languages of Symbolic Power, Polity. Again, this is an invitation to reflective sociology by in 1992 by Chicago. The Field of Cultural Production. No French translation. It's because it goes la règle art, right? The idea from Stanford, the rules of art. I don't really know how to do this. I think my wife's trying to come in here. I hope she doesn't come in because I don't have to. I'm live. I don't know what to say. Then the Masculine Domination of 1989, published by Stanford. Then the State Nobility, about the elite schools, against that in 1998. And then the culture stuff, television and journalism, which became the big thing, published again. These were a combination. Sur la télévision, 1996, Les Jeux Olympiques, 1994, and the Les Journalisme de la Politique, 1997. All of these were reprinted together as on television journalism, 98, published in New York, Free Press, New Press, and in London and Pluto Press, reprinted with the same context as on television, 2011. So therefore, the medium market, 2011. This is at the same time as who? This is Zizek, the Zizek fetish. Okay, Zizek's fetish, or this Marxism and postmodernism in a post-Foucaultian universe. I think this is interesting. You have to understand Foucault is that interesting that intersection between the post-structuralist Marxism and the post-structure power relations in Foucault, that then goes with his biopolitics down a sexual orientation, which Guyot Deleuze follows. And then this then tends to lead to the shift to people like Judith Butler and other thinkers who go down the sexual range. I can see a little bit of Baudelaire following this with the idea of masculine domination. I can see that he followed that rabbit hole, but then he goes down the cultural path, and he then tries to regain, spends the end of his life trying to kind of recover his status within the idea of forms of capital, his collected works, his multiple 5-volume collected works published by Polity, right? That deals with this, and it goes. I don't want. I have a problem here. Is that this is a French revolutionary left? He is out of sorts. He just really doesn't have a sort of this. In the 1990s in France, what happened was you had the beginning of the New Liberals, the rise of Alain Renault. I forget the other people. Pierre Menat. Basically, the liberals following Iran finally get their days in the 90s. With the rise of Chirac's government, in that sense, and that they Luc Frey. Again, I don't want to get out of this. I think I have to go here to. What is it? I'm streaming. Where is it? Yeah, Luc Frey and Alain Renault, as Corlitz knows. These are the boys. So you're asking me about anti-racism. I'm going to finish this. In 1988, Taguieff wrote a very detailed study about racism, anti-racism, where he predicted the anti-racism was likely. So yes, that's true. And he says the far left replaced fading Marxism and would inspire witch hunts. And I think this is right. Tartuffe's critique of the question is, what is Tartuffe? Is Tartuffe is part? I don't know who this Tartuffe is. Is he kind of Ironish, or is he kind of this? Let me be a bad boy. Let me be a bad boy. Let me check. French philosopher Pierre-André Tartuffe. He's still alive. born 1946, so he's in that. He's a friend of Alan Dibus. Okay, well, he is a man of the hard right in that sense. Alan de Benoist. He's associated with that. He's a French philosopher who specialized in the study of racism, anti-Semitism. He's a director of the research of French National Center for Scientific Research and the Institute of Political. The Institute of Studies of Politics, the Paris Laboratory, the Center for Political Research. I don't know. He predicted correctly. I mean, this is interesting. His stuff on racism. He's famous studying the idea of the Double's 1987 book, Les Forces du Préjudice, Essays sur le racisme, Dubels. So therefore, this argument of three different types of racism, which is interesting. He says, what is the first type of racism is misgenics, which favor social segregation. These are people like 19th century relations theory, like Gibbon. This actually echoes what Vogelin argues in his two race books. Okay, his two race books in 1930s. Second type is insidious, hosted by the Enlightenment philosophy of universalism. Its dream of utility of mankind may bring it in specific instances. The will to annihilate all cultural differences. Right, this idea of this. And then he says to this point is not declaring that enlightened philosophy is racist itself, but the extreme forms of this will of universality may lead in practice to the destruction of pluralities of cultures and the rejections of even moderate forms of multiculturalism. This universality, right? This is the universality and the oppressiveness of universality. The third and the most recent type of this is cultural relativist attacks against races. This new form of racism has reversed the anti-racist arguments of the ethologist Claude Levi-Strauss. According to Levi-Strauss, different cultures are incommensurable, and because of this, each one thinks progress and superiority are on its side. Levi-Strauss, in his 1952 essay for the UNESCO, used the famous metaphor of the two trains crossing each other's path, each one thinking that it's going the right way, while the others do not move and it's backwards. Because of this, ethnocentrism is a necessary optical illusion in which in turn racist discourse used to justify itself. Right? This is this idea of structuralist understanding of Levi-Strauss. And again, Claude Levi-Strauss is very much a kind of neo-Marxist in that sense, in that radical structural Marxism, right? So, I don't think he is tied to someone like Benoist. He's almost like kind of responding, kind of arguing against it. But then the problem with this is, he said in 2007, he wrote a book as Les Contra-Reactionaries, in which he opposed both anti-racism and anti-fascism. He considers them as ideologies which are instrumented by far-left groups aiming to regularize as many illegal immigrants as possible without any regulation. Okay? So, I mean, he is a man of what I call the right. The question is he really tied to someone like Benoist, who's clearly nationalistic and stronger? Again, Wikipedia is not to be trusted here. It would be interesting to see his work in that sense. So, okay. He is closely connected to the French Jewish. I think he. I think he is a liberal. He is a liberal in the sense. He's not Benoist. He's not a Benoist who is clearly not a friend of those sectors you mentioned. He may. I think this Tartuffe guy. It may be what we call the liberal. Hence, this is even more outrageous. A French liberal is tied to people like the French liberals are much more tied to someone like Pierre Minot and those crowd. So therefore he has some good arguments with, yeah, he probably had some good arguments with Benasoit in the 80s. Benasoit in the 80s was a little bit more kind of an interesting critique of this. In the 1990s, he started getting more and more. D. Benasoit eventually gets black-pilled, increasingly black-pilled in that sense. He goes down with his book on ruins, this Nordic linguistic, he goes down the more darker direction that I'm not comfortable with. It's my same problem. I think he ultimately goes down the path with. This is why I can never study what's his name, Evola. Evola, it's too romantic. It is ultimately kind of a. What's his? It was tied to what he said. It was tied to this idea that he just said there a second ago. Yeah, Gobineau. I've never really had a stomach for Gobineau. I think it was bad. It's metaphysical. It's metaphysical racism, not understanding of actual biology and things like that. There is something as much. Gobineau's racism is much more tied to something like the kind of racial theory of the French Enlightenment period, who argued for the idea of the the inferiority of some races over the other. The idea that you bring the Americans were. What is that famous thing? In fact, Thomas Jefferson writes the notes on the state of Virginia to respond to these French biologists, famous French, and his disciples, who argued that the Americans, the American continent was a backwards place and it was barbarous and backwards, and that's because of the environment of nature there, and that you took European animals and they become monstrous. Where Jefferson argues the opposite in the thing. We can look at Jefferson's notes on the states of Virginia as a kind of a biopolitical defense against the French bad natural science. That's another point I don't want to get into. We're over the hour. I don't really. I've been really struggling with some aspects of struggling with some aspects of this. The French writers are very difficult to go through. Gauchet. I read a lot of Gauchet earlier in my life. I remember reading the book in the 80s when it first came out, the first translations of Gauchet's. I mentioned my friend Dan Mahoney basically became a Pierre Minette cheerleader, and also Dessol cheerleader, and actually they're friends of people like of Baton, not Pierre Baton, and this is a very important this French liberal tradition following from Raymond Aron, which is Aron is a sociologist. Aron's main currents of sociology books, where he talks about the whole tradition of sociology, and very much tied in a kind of even a kind of respect for Marx that I have troubles with. The problem is that I'm too much of an Aristotle respects classes. Aristotelian understanding of the rich and the poor and the classes opens Aristotle up to understand the importance of social classes in the development of politics. The Enlightenment will speak of factions, but don't really fully understand classes. Marx's discussion of classes it is the problem with Marx's analysis of classes is that he has a systemic ontology of one class being preferable to another class. For Aristotle, each class has its strengths and weaknesses. Yes, there are some classes that, in fact, Aristotle's prevent is the idea of the middle class. He dislikes the rich and the poor. The rich and the poor are both. This is book 4, chapter 11, where he specifically shows the dangers, the problems of the rich and the problems of the poor, and why the mesos, the middle class, is a preferable condition. Because why? Because the idea of rich and poor is tied to the question of means, capital, right? Means, capital. And this is why there is something always economic. There's an economic dimension in Aristotle that people want to ignore. I think there's a thing about this. And I think if we want to, in other words, people still turn to Marx because of his class analysis. And this is the problem with Marx's class analysis is that it doesn't understand the middle class. Okay, it sees the middle class as the bourgeois and its productive class, and therefore sees this in terms of determined classes and the need to exterminate the classes for this. But they don't fail to realize this is that famous cartoon series. Is that wonderful cartoon published by these you can see it online, these guys who make fun of the philosophers. And there's a scene where Marx, the 2008 thing, revolution, and then and then Kant has to slap Kant, and Hegel have to slap, and the other philosophers have to slap Marx down, saying, "Carl, you have to realize, philosophy only is a product of the middle classes, the bourgeoisie. No bourgeoisie, no philosophy." Oops! That's the hilarious aspect of this. There's a problem with the modern bourgeoisie, though. This is why Rousseau goes too far. I think this is what's wrong. I think it's misunderstanding to understand that a defense of the middle class is a defense of the bourgeoisie. I think the critique of the bourgeoisie does not mean the repudiation of the middle class, because we need to understand what the middle class really means. The middle class is not a specific class like the bourgeoisie, but rather it is a class. It is the question of those who have enough means that they're neither poor but not too much that they become arrogant and rich. It's an argument for moderation. Again, this is the classic Aristotelian moderation defense. In other words, that too much money makes you arrogant, but having no money makes you slavish and violent. Right? The idea of the rise of this. Now, a friend of mine just sent me a tweet saying, "Well, what about something else?" Because this weekend, tomorrow I have to we're going to be reading Shakespeare. We're doing the Greek plays. We're doing the Comedy of Errors. Comedy of Errors. And we're going to be finishing up not Pericles. We're finishing up Timon of Athens. We've had fun with Timon of Athens. Timon of Athens is the Peloponnesian Wars. Alcibiades comes out ahead, man, which is interesting in that sense. So I'm going to have fun tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. You guys, it's been fun to be with you. An hour. I don't really want to go more than that. I'm a bad boy. I got really, and my wife wants to go do things. So I have to talk. I have to thank Corliss for coming in and say something. If you've liked it, I see one like. I hope some more people will like it. Hit like buttons. I got a feeling people will watch it after this because I didn't see Green Glass. He should popped up his head. He said he came in there last week. I still have to apologize for leaving you out that 1 week because of traffic hells. I apologize. Mea culpa, mea culpa. I'm going to be here next week. I'm kind of like doing ties of progress. I might have a problem in one of the meetings in December because, well, it's supposed to be at 4 o'clock. I'm supposed to have a slap on the wrists by the Gestapo, my university Gestapo. Is going to do me, and they're not going to do it in person. We'll do it by online. My wife said they're cowards for doing this, and technically they're not supposed to do this. So it will be fun because if they rule against me, I will complain that this, even though I agreed to an online meeting, the online meeting is not appropriate by the law. So again, these guys are the gang that can't shoot straight. So I'll have another grounds for appeal because they're just grossly administrative incompetent. I will complain again. I will simply just say, listen, I'm not going to agree with this. I think this was badly constructed. They did not bother to meet me in person. They're going to be hardly core. I want to know who's here. If there's not I want people are not going to be there. I'm going to say, I want the full body. Well, you don't need a full body to do this. Then I want an attendance sheet of who's here, formally attached to this. And I will not accept the signatures of those who weren't here. I'm going to defend myself. I'm saying, well, you're not here. You weren't here. So how can you sign this? Okay. So it's going to be fun. So please put your comments, questions, and things that you want to ask me about this. I don't understand did you say? I didn't understand a single thing. You talked about moroses and this stuff. I hope people. I'm sorry, I'm responding to this. If people have any comments, we can talk about things more. I have not started recording my. I admit, mea culpa. I have not started recording my discourses yet. I'm going to be doing it probably in December. We'll see how I feel. I might do a lot over Christmas. I probably will take a break from doing live streams for Christmas. We'll see how I feel. How it is. But I may do a couple of recordings. I will have my mother-in-law come. Will be with us, rather than us going to there. So this is going to be our big crisis, family crisis. Our mother-in-law may be coming to our little prisoners camp here. What else? I'm trying to figure out what the hell to do with my Federalist Papers outline. I have to talk to somebody, an online person, to do something. I'm also having a problem with my Aristotle's thing. Someone gave me some. Someone wants to fix my this up a little bit, and I might make a new edition of this. Simply just not a new edition, but an updated, corrected version of this, fixing any small errors that I've missed. They're not substantively; they're just typos and nothing substantively wrong. What else? Okay, I have my monster Aristotle's chapter by chapter analytical outline. I had some success with connecting my links to it. Connecting my course Slack. Embedding the YouTube video to my outline. I know how to do this now. I just have to sit down and go do it. I have most of it ready to do. I have to wait until all the things have. I have to go check where I have left, and I have to go back and go check it, and then go through it, because if I try doing anything else, I think I'll have a problem because of they're still going through it. So I probably have to go and put some of the links towards it. I need to go talk to a designer, a web host. I cannot use my tripod thing. I've lost my password access. And when I tried accessing it, they want me to pay for something. So my website still exists on tripod, the old one, But if I go try to, get access to it, they want me to. They'd say, "Oh, you have nothing here," and they want me to pay for something I can't have access to.
Mm.
It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. So I'm kind of like, and I think it's tied. The original thing is tied to a account that I've long lost shut down. My original email, which was on the Ocean State Freenet, which that went out of existence in early thousands. So gotta figure out what to do with the damn website. I want to do my Aristotle website, Aristotle's Politics outline with embedded videos to the thing. I'm going to talk with the university here to host my Federalist Papers analytical outline. And I might do a series on the Federalist Papers. That might be one of the things I might start doing. So I might just do a series on each time, not reading a Federalist Paper, but talking about it. So that might be the la thing I might do. So that's those things. The video series on the discourses, which will come in the spring, January, end of January, February, March is going to be. Remember how long it's going to be? Just as long as they have many chapters. Like there's, so there's huge amount of what's going to happen with that. And what else? There is the semester going on. The new semester is going to be 5 courses. I should have done a course on prints. I want to do a course on the prints. I want to teach a course on the prints so badly at the Open University, but I just need to have someone help me write the damn thing in Polish, because you have to write the proposal in Polish. I haven't heard about the Midwest conference yet, if my paper has been accepted or not. I was told that the coordinator said they would accept it, but I haven't got the formal notice, because until I get the formal notice, I won't apply. I will ask for my flight ticket, flying my airplane ticket, buy me a one-way flight back and forth from that. I will then apply to the grant. Apply for the grant, transfer grant to go to the conference and pay for the conference. Crossing finger, hope it happens. I'm not going to order it. I'm not going to have my wife buy a ticket to the university thing. I'm not, because then they'll try to say to me, "Oh, your wife's with you, so you get half the money for your turn." No. You buy a room in the United States hotel. You don't. It's a 2-person room, and you don't charge another person in it. It just, you buy the room as a 2-person room. It doesn't have, so I'm buying the room. It's mine. Well, you should go with the other person. This is how cheap the freaking university can be. Oh, you want 2 together, you should pay half and half. No, you should pay. I'm going to my room myself. If my wife comes with me, she's gonna come with me. With me, because I want to see Chicago one more time before my age. I'm 60 years old next year. So it's going to be, it's pushing my luck at my life expectancy level. What else is to do? So if you like my videos, please hit the like button, hit the things, do it. If those of you watching on the thing later, you can hit the like button and the like thing. You can even say down if you didn't like it. What else to do? You can share. You can share my videos, share it far and wide. Sharing your social media, how you want to do it, whatever. You can follow my social media accounts, or you can follow my academic social media accounts. These are the things to check up. Another way you can do so is to want to be subscribe star or Patreon. I don't think anyone has done it. I haven't ever noticed a flag. How come? I'm not big enough of a website that people do this. It would have been nice if people did that, but it's not happening. I don't think I have a bunch of students and people poor. No, So what else I'm doing is you buy one of my books that's going out there. I have a booklet out there right now on the Polis that's available as EPUB. I hope people buy it. It's kind of like the Polis as the classical political form. It is going to be a chapter, one of the 3 chapters of my political form, the political form book I might be writing, which is going to be an article about, a couple of things together. I put a little book together on the, but this is the first volume. This is going to be the kind of like I'll do 2 EPUBs just to get people to read them, to get interested in them, and then hopefully then I'll put the book together and have it go to a publisher and say, listen, the physical book copy I want to go through a university press or something like that. Then I'll get some attention towards it. And, voila. That's it. You can see my things up there. I hope everyone's okay. Have a good weekend. Next week in America is Thanksgiving, so when we meet, will be after Thanksgiving. So I'll say happy thanks. Hope my American colleagues, my people in America, have a good Thanksgiving coming up, and have a good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye. See you again next week. Bye-bye.